Let's begin this section by considering a central idea about our quixotic nature's process of acquiring wisdom. It is this: the primary wisdom goal for our quixotic nature is to move from self-centeredness to self-management. Let me repeat that. Simply stated, through motivational change, our quixotic nature moves from self-centeredness to self-management. And self-management, as defined here, is not the same as self-restraint or control. In this context, self-restraint or control represses maladaptive behavior, while self-management regulates and results from the transformation of maladaptive behavior. As we shall see, self-restraint or control is an exercise of ego will or egotism, which resides in our purposeful nature. And, as outlined in the course introduction, our purposeful nature is the subject of Part 2 of this course. For now, consider that if our ego will acts without wisdom, it is prone to failure, or if we tend to behave compulsively or suffer from addiction, our ego will is vulnerable to relapse. As will be discussed in Part 2, our ego will is very sensitive to the whims of our self-centeredness, and the egotism in us is a formidable adversary. I can directly attest to this. At one point, my existence was characterized by my ego pattern in life, an ego convulsed with fear, sotted with pleasure, and generally missing or avoidant when relating to others. Conversely, I've discovered, through self-management, a genuine self-knowledge which is anchored in and sourced within Elizabeth, my higher power or wisdom. Here is another personal example taken directly from my own experience. Listen to the audio clip on this slide that captured the idea of the necessity of a wisdom anchor in life. The audio clip is a segment of a conversation I had with Michael, my life partner. Okay, Michael, as we were talking about the quixotic nature and how it may be buttressed by certain classical thoughts and ideas, we were talking about Cupid and Psyche, and how the relationship between the two can help to inform those forces that engage the quixotic nature. Also, this idea of the quixotic nature without wisdom can get pulled to the dark side, can make choices and take actions in lives that's not helpful, that can lead to many problems, even significant mental health problems. So you wanted when we were talking, you said you wanted to talk more about how you can see how the quixotic nature in you did not have the anchor of wisdom. Can you say more about that?
Well, first, let me give a little. It's interesting you talked about Cupid and Psyche because I could see the allure, the attraction between the two, and how that was pursued, and I see that as the basis of background in classical literature for the psychology that we proceed with today. That um, speaks to temptations, attractions of the world, desires, the like. That's really a part of the human dilemma until we, find some sense of focus and foundation to help us better handle and deal with it. But having said that, um, the quixotic experience and nature of man as relates to my background and experience really is interesting for me today because how they say hindsight is 2020. I can really look at who I was at that time and what was the attraction for me in terms of the world and how I proceeded and pursued what I thought was a interesting, tantalizing, exciting life that I've wanted for some reason. And I was telling you earlier that my parents, they had values and principles that they tried to convey to me. Things like get a good education, go to church, try to get some skills through school, through work, to develop and evolve in this particular area, so you can have a good life and have let's say a Christian, a spiritual foundation to your life. But there was something about the street. There was something about the area I came up in that it was almost like the world was saying, never mind all that, pursue excitement, pursue things that just had pleasure associated with it, or things that you heard and thought would bring a certain level of pleasure and excitement to your life. Um, Without the anchor that you spoke about earlier, and that was important to hear you say about having an anchor. That's the cathartic nature is proceeding into life in particular temptations and experiences that seem appealing on exciting in an exciting kind of way that don't have that anchor. You know, when I hear you say that anchor, that's like something that's saying, hold it. You know, before you walk down that path, take a look at this and think about this and remember what your parents told you or something like that, or what somebody else of a certain wisdom might have told you that you use as a buffer or as a sense of guide to proceed. And that's on some level a form of wisdom that somebody tried to convey to you, and you might have gotten a little piece of it or bit of it that's helpful to you. And most young people, young girls, young boys, men and women, that's how we proceed in terms of having that buffer anchor. But I didn't have that. The will took over, and it was like, no, don't worry about all that. Go into life, grab the excitement, grab the entertainment, grab the pleasure, and that's what you want. You know, that's what it's all about. You know, don't worry about all that stuff. So a sense of responsibility for me was very much lacking, and I found myself in my pursuit really being caught up in, you might say, the, the dark side on some level, or eventually got to that, to where the road I went down, and in the beginning, it had a certain glitter associated with it. You know, they say, oh, everything that glitters is not gold. It appeared one way to me, but as I proceeded, it didn't end up that way. But to get back to the original premise of our discussion, the anchor was missing. Not because my parents or other people didn't try to afford me the anchor or help me create an anchor. I wasn't listening. It just drew me. So I'll end with that for now. But we'll get back to this discussion because there's much more that I would like to say about life and the pursuit of what you think is entertaining, interesting, and pleasure filled, as opposed to having a certain guide or anchor that would help you have a much richer life if you use it and listen to it in the way you need to.